Welcome to the Healing Bitch podcast. I'm Jackie Ortez, a psychic medium that has a penchant for all things spiritual. During this time with me, we will explore the world of energy and how it affects us all. Each podcast will address a question submitted from my listeners that I feel I have the authority to answer. So get comfy, throw on your headphones, and let's see what happens. Hi, and welcome back to the Healing Bitch podcast. I am so excited today to be with Sara Rae. We're going to be talking about her experience with being a tarot reader and how that's been for her in some ways that she may want to accelerate her practice and her connection with spirit. So, hi, first of all, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I totally took my questions from my phone into my pad that says crap, by the way, and then opens my phone trying to look for the questions. Okay, anyway, I'm happy to be talking to you about it because, as you know, I am a intuitive reader, so I don't use any kind of tools. I did try at one point to use tarot and read it intuitively, but I found that it almost became like a distraction because I was taught how to read without anything at first. So were you taught to read? Like, how did you get into tarot? How did this happen?
I went to the world's smallest library when I was staying with my in-laws, and I found a random book, and I was like, oh, tarot, what's that? Interesting. What is this weird thing? I had, like, for some reason I had an inner knowing that I was like, oh, that. I want to learn about that. But I didn't really know what it was. And then my mother-in-law was randomly like, oh, you bought a book on the tarot. That's interesting. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And it was like very old school, like probably written in the 70s. It was really dense, hard to read. But it was almost like that one random book that I found in a random library that I'd never been to since. It was so small. It was kind of like, oh, yeah, this whole world exists. And it was like a remembering. And ever since then, it's been something I really am into for a long time. At this point in my journey, I wouldn't say that cards are a distraction. They're more, for me at this point, a validation, where I don't think I'm quite at that point with my skills yet where I can just pull it out. You know, I feel like I need that buffer almost to be like, yep, this is correct. And everything that I get intuitively for my clients and like when I read for like online for larger groups of people, I get that sense of validation for tarot. So it is very intuitive as well, but it also for me kind of just acts as a look, what I'm saying is real. Look at this is just happening right now. So yeah, that's kind of how I stumbled into it. I taught myself. I never like took any intentional course or anything like that. I just kind of realized it was really cool and beautiful, and I love the diversity of tarot and oracle decks, and that's just kind of it opened a whole door for me.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, because you said that it what did you say? It felt like it was familiar, or whatever words you use. Like, do you think you
it was
did
a remembering?
Yes, remembering. So you think you did this in past lives then?
I think so. I think so, because it's like it was almost as if I was familiar with it, even though I knew I'd never really encountered tarot before in this life anyway. And yet I like knew what it was at the same time. It was really cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
I love that you were just like, probably like you walked past it and you were just like drawn.
Yep, just like pluck. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Do you, what deck did you start with?
It was the Celestial Tarot. I forget who it's by. But it was not a great deck. Like for some reason, it just didn't resonate with me. I can't even really remember what I was thinking when I got it. I remember I was in a metaphysical store with my husband, and he picked up a tarot deck called the Tarot of Dreams, which I still use occasionally. It's a really realistic looking deck, which is the type of deck I tend to prefer. But the Celestial Tarot was based on astrology, and it had a lot of symbolism in there that wasn't quite traditional. So it wasn't like a good beginner deck, in my opinion. Looking back in hindsight, it was a little bit more advanced. And I had always had the hardest time reading those cards because it just didn't really feel right. It wasn't in alignment. And yet I got that deck. Why? I don't know. Probably because I was like, oh, I'm super into astrology. And and the tarot is like my thing right now. So this is perfect. But I remember I couldn't not for the life of me figure out what those cards were saying to me. I couldn't figure it out. And I know I still have that deck somewhere. I think it's shoved in a closet somewhere. And I occasionally think about maybe I should pull it out. Maybe I should give it to somebody. Maybe I'll give it to my daughter one day. But I don't know. It was not the best deck in the world.
Yeah, just gift it to somebody. I find that really, and I wonder if you find this too. I find gifted decks have like a special place in my heart. So I do have one tarot deck that I absolutely love, and it's the Angel Tarot.
Oh yeah.
The one by Doreen Virtue. Well, before she went off the edge.
Before the things.
And I always forget the second person that did it. But I have the original one that still has her name on it, and it was gifted to me, and I love it. That is a deck I use for myself, and I like randomly pull cards. So has someone like gifted one to you that you really found was like close to you or you really had a connection to?
Kind of. I knew a couple years ago that I wanted a new tarot deck, and so I did a lot of research. I looked at all kinds of decks, and I narrowed it down. I was like, I know this is the type of style that I want. I like realistic portraits on my decks, and I picked out the Everyday Witch Tarot, and then my mother-in-law got it for me for Christmas. So, I mean, it technically was gifted, but I did pick it out for myself as well.
That counts.
Yes. But I was also given, is it Gabrielle Bernstein that did like an affirmation deck where it's like watercolor backgrounds?
I think so.
Yeah, that one was given to me. And I haven't pulled from it for a very long time, but I was obsessed with that deck for a while, and I loved it.
That one's really pretty.
It is beautiful.
It's not really beautiful. It has like the pastel-y.
Yep, it's pastel, and like it looks like it was like written by hand.
Yeah.
So the art was really nice, and I just really enjoyed it, and it resonated with me a lot from where I was at that point. I also have the Oracle of the Unicorns, which is amazing. One of my favorites, but it's kind of silly though. It almost felt juvenile. I was almost embarrassed by it for a while because it's like, oh, unicorns, are you 9? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I am 9, and I do love unicorns.
There's nothing wrong with a little bit of mystical creatures in your life.
And they're so beautiful. And but I also, since we're talking about all the tarot decks, I don't have a bunch. Like these are pretty much all the decks that I've listed here. The Tarot of Dreams, I can never remember who it's by, but that deck is really interesting. Now that I'm more advanced and I know, I read intuitively, but now I also know like the more traditional meanings of most of the cards. I have a lot easier time reading that deck, and it's got like bonus cards in it. A couple of the major arcana cards are different. So I really enjoy that one. It's also the type of art that I enjoy. It's realistic. But my favorite Oracle deck that I really, really resonate with is the Spirit Animal deck by Colette Baron Reed.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. A lot of people have that deck, yeah.
So incredibly gorgeous. I also learned recently that the Everyday Witch Tarot, which is my soulmate tarot deck, that like is my tarot deck, has an Oracle version too. So I need to get my hands on that one.
Oh, I might have to write that down. That actually sounds like, so this just has to do with the word witch. But the reason why my podcast is called The Healing Bitch is because my mom has like an aversion to the word witch, which of course makes me want everything that has everything witchy witch on it. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look at me, I'm a fucking witch. But whatever. I had such a good question, and I lost, of course, my train of thought. As
I firmly believe that if it's important, Spirit always sends it back to you.
Always, it will always do a nice little U-turn and boomerang right back into my brain. So what do you do? I find this interesting for myself because since I intuitively read, I don't read for myself. I have to go to a reader to get a reading. When it comes to tarot, though, like you can almost like, I know you get intuitive messages, but do you feel comfortable reading for yourself, because
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like my messages, I am biased at
Oh yeah.
what I think, you
I
know?
can totally understand that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. So to avoid the biased messages when I read for myself, I first off shuffle, cleanse very good, very well,
Mhm.
as you normally would. But I probably shuffle a little bit more than I would for anyone else when it's just me. And I don't second guess anything. Like
Mhm.
sometimes when I'm pulling for a client, I go, oh well, that one maybe, oh maybe it's that one. I like try to find the ones that like really stand out to pull
Mhm.
for the client. But when it's for me, it's just the first one, and then I take it at face value. So I do read for myself. I haven't gotten my cards read by somebody else in a long time. Like
Really?
usually I go to people like you that are more just like channels.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes
and
sense.
so I haven't had my cards read by somebody else for a while. It's probably been like 2 years since somebody else has read my cards.
Yeah,
And I
that's
remember
actually, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say the last time someone read my cards, they used like 3 different decks, so it was a little overkill in my opinion. That reading did not really resonate with me, if I'm being honest. But I think that my readings for myself do resonate more than when other people do it for me because I'm so in tune with that particular deck. Like it is my soulmate deck. And
Mhm.
it's just how spirit and I communicate. And we're so used to it now at this point that it's really easy for me to read for myself at this point. And that's how
Did
I
you like
started too.
did you like carry it around to get like that connection? Because I see some people like that's what I heard when I started like thinking about reading. It was like put the tarot deck in your purse and
Yeah.
carry it around with you and do all that stuff and have like the personal connection of your energy. Did you do any of that?
I didn't carry it around because the box is quite bulky.
Uh-huh.
But I will say I hardly ever put it in its box. It's always sitting out on my desk. And I play with it a lot and I touch it a lot. And at this point, I've had it for a few years. So it's been
Yeah.
through a lot of readings. I look at the art a lot. Like I'll flip it over and I'll just like look at the art because it's so beautiful. If you're listening to this, you should definitely go to Google The Everyday Witch Tarot by Deborah Blake. It's beautiful.
I have to write it down.
Very realistic pictures and portraits. And um, it's got cats on it and it's
Oh.
very whimsical and it's very beautiful. So I just really admired it for a long time
Mhm.
and I just kept practicing. Every day I was pulling cards for a while and I also do this with spirit connection in general, but I tried to go with it even if I like pull cards for myself even if I didn't necessarily have a question to ask it. I didn't want to wait until I was in a point where I was feeling really low or I like was desperate to answer a question or something. I tried to get it at the mundane parts in life too to kind of build that personal connection because I didn't want to associate it with those really low moments. Like I only pull the tarot when I'm really struggling. Like I didn't want
Mhm.
that. I wanted it to be a magical connected thing that I have all the time. And no, I didn't necessarily carry it with my purse all the time because the box is too big. But I will say I have done traveling readings. And if I do go somewhere where I potentially might be pulling them out, I'm not afraid to bring it with me. So that is a thing. But
Oh, that's so fun.
I think I like just physically spent a lot of time with it
Yeah.
and got to know it that when I read the book cover to cover many times. So
So do you like when you read for yourself for do you do like mundane things now? Like should I have a pizza or a burger for lunch? Or do you do stuff like that?
maybe not quite that mundane. Maybe not quite like that. But I will say like, oh, like the most mundane question, like, oh, what message do I need to know for today
Okay,
or
yeah.
for this week? Something like along
Okay.
those lines. But I do also do like more in-depth readings, probably once a month or even a little
Uh-huh.
bit more frequently than that. So yeah, I do the mundane things for sure.
Yeah, that I could see myself doing that. Being like, do
Yeah.
I want a salad today? Or do I want that? Even though I know what the answer is, I want to be like just a tarot match. What?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
probably would.
Because I know you can use it for yes or no questions,
Oh
right?
yeah.
There's like certain cards that are is it like defined which cards are for yes or no, or is it like up to whatever you feel?
That's a great question. I do think yes or no questions with the tarot, different with Oracle, but with tarot, it does take a little bit of skill because I don't think that you can really read into it too much. Because if
Mhm.
you're asking a yes or no question in theory, this is just my opinion, by the way. If you're asking a yes or no question, you want like a quick answer. Like you're not really looking for some in-depth, long-winded explanation most of the time when you ask a yes or no question. So if you ask a yes or no question, then you get the death card. I think you got your answer. If you ask a yes or no question, you get the sun. You know, kind of, you just have to kind of take it at face value, in my opinion. But I think overall, if you do ask a yes or a no question, you should go with the overall energy of the cards. One of the reasons why I like the detailed cards. You know, there's some cards out there that are like really simplistic and there's kind of like graphics or like they're just shapes or something like that. That to me, that doesn't give enough information to go off of. So if I pull a card and it's like a person who like looks like they're having a horrible day and like their face is like full of agony and they're like in a, you know, surrounded by swords in a broken dead forest on a mountain or something. Like, I mean, it tells so much more of a story that's a lot easier to interpret than just like a triangle or something.
Yeah, I find that too, because like even with the angel tarot, when I was using it a little bit to read it intuitively, I wouldn't even look at the message. I would look at what my eye was drawn to in the illustration.
Yes.
And then I would do it from there. And it would be like a card where the message was actually sad, but I'd be like, oh no, you're going on a trip. So it's so I think that's where it would like kind of like trip me up, because it would be I would get the opposite message of what the actual card was because I wasn't reading it. And then the client would read it and they'd be like, this says that I'm living in an illusion. I'm like, oh no, but you're going on a cruise. Like, I don't understand. Yeah. So,
well,
so
I think that's what makes
that.
oracle cards a little bit more challenging than normal.
Yeah.
Is because an oracle card does tend to have those words written right on it. Like it tells you exactly what's up. And that could be for, you know, for better or for worse, when a tarot card is a lot more up for debate, in my opinion. So I do think people get a little too hung up on the words sometimes. And it is more about the emotion that the overall card conveys for you. And really, no matter how you look at anything, you can always connect things together. Like you're going on a cruise, but you're also living in an illusion. Like maybe going away takes you out of that illusion. You know, I think you can always bring it together in some regard. Like this, as you know,
smart.
Spirit always has a reason to pull certain things out into your attention. So
I know. I love when I have a question and I pull a card and I'm like, that's not the one I want. And then I do it again and the same frigging card comes out.
Oh my
and
God,
then I do
repeats.
it again and the same frigging card comes out. And I'm like, okay. I get it. I
do love repeating cards.
I get your point.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So for the longest time, up until like for 2022 and like 2023 and a good amount of 2024, I was going live every single week doing tarot card readings on Facebook. And then 2024, I swear there were like 6 weeks in a row where we pulled the death card. And I'm like, I swear to you guys, I am shuffling. You can see me shuffling here. I'm cleansing these things and we're pulling the death card like every single week. So repeating cards are just spirit going, like they're just like shaking.
They're going like, how many times do I have to tell you?
Right. Or it's something so big and important, such a huge shift that's happening that it takes time. Which is one of the reasons why I don't do daily reads.
Yeah.
The messages get too similar, which is nothing inherently wrong with that. I just don't need to be told the same thing over and over again because then I get blind to it. You know?
And not even that, like you want to live.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want the messages every day because you want to live and you want to learn to trust yourself instead of trusting a tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's what it is, a tool.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like that. The question came and left again. I can't handle myself. I honestly can't handle myself. Okay, so you did mention that you might in the future want to switch a bit more to like intuitive reading or like add on intuitive reading and medium reading. Like what's kind of like behind the want to do it? Is it just like expansion of yourself and your spiritual side?
Yeah, for sure. That as well. I think I've told you before that mediumship in the way that you do it, Jackie, is I think very noble, very incredibly important work. I have such respect for mediums, like really gifted, skilled mediums who are able to deliver really clear messages in the exact way that you do. I think it's incredible, especially when you're helping bereaved people, like tapping into people's loved ones on the other side for whatever messages they have. There's like, it seems to me there's no greater work. Like that's truly God's work. And I want in on that. I think it's amazing. I think the ability to do it is really interesting. It's always been like with me, like it's never been weird to do that sort of thing. Like, it might be a little weird to say, but I've never been a stranger to death. Like when I was really young, I lost my great grandpa, as you can imagine. And then just kind of regularly throughout my life, people I've known have died. Like, and not everyone can say that. Like I've realized as a young adult that a lot of people haven't experienced the death of someone close to them. And to me, it was just kind of like a normal thing, which is sad to say, of course. But it was always something like close to me, and it was never weird or scary. And I've always been really interested in like afterlives and like visitors, and we've always had paranormal experiences. So it's always been there. And like it's always been like within my reach. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in that sort of work, is because it's always been there. It's always been with me. And I just think it's really noble and a really beautiful thing to share with people.
You really need to do your past lives. Have you done them before?
Not officially. I've been told a couple things as they were relevant in the moment. Like I've been told, I've said this on podcasts before, but I've been told before that I was on like a vessel, like a ship of some kind. I'm pretty sure the word the medium used was like a pirate ship.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't know about that.
That actually, that's the exact image I got as soon as you said ship in my head. Yeah, it was a pirate
so
ship.
the last person that told me that I like had to walk the plank essentially, and I like had to go overboard, and I drowned, and I got dragged down by something like scary. And the thing is, like, I don't do water, like literally like to my ankles or my knees, and that's it. I will not get in water. Like fuck water.
Oh, and yet, that's so funny because earlier I was like, water is my element.
No, and people know that I have dreams of living on the ocean. Like I want the sand to be my front yard, and I've lived next to the Mississippi River my entire life. Like I need to be near water, but I literally won't touch it. I literally won't touch it. I don't even go in pools. Like I just
what?
Yeah.
I'm like a fish.
No, I'm a wannabe fish. Like I remember when I was pregnant the first time with my daughter, I had this like need to swim, and it was so weird to me. I was like, I need to get into a damn pool like right now. I need to find a bathing suit. I need to go swimming right fucking now. And of course, she's a little fish. She loves swimming. Yeah. So I kind of chalked it up to that. But I do know that that's been a past life thing that's been mentioned before.
Yeah, you need to do a past life session and do Ho'oponopono associated with it to get rid of it. So Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian method of forgiveness. Oh. And if you work with certain practitioners, they will pull certain things from your past lives, and then you like, oh, getting weird. You visualize with yourself what you looked like in that life and when that thing happened. So you can visualize your pirate, whatever self, walking the plank, and you like forgive yourself for that lifetime, and then that fear leaves in this lifetime.
I genuinely need that. What I'm okay with the water. What I actually need help with is my intense fear of blood. That's debilitating to me. Yes. That's what I need help with. It's fun.
Oh,
so you actually saw an image of a pirate ship, of like a boat?
As soon as you said it, I saw the flag.
That is insane.
That's
so validating. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. And it's funny because I don't think I mentioned this. The reason why I go to readings myself, and besides the bias thing, is because I believe readings should always be used for confirmation for what I already know. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about that versus like someone that's like, am I going to marry this guy? Or not even like, I don't get those questions being an intuitive reader. I feel like yes, I don't get them that often.
Wow.
I feel like with tarot readers, it's more associated with asking about a love life, asking about a job. Like for me, it's more like advice connected with spirit, and people I feel like are more open and they don't come in with pointed questions. They want to just see what comes up. So is that true? Is that how it usually goes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think the caveat is that spirit doesn't care.
No.
So yeah, you might have your questions, but spirit goes, I tell you what you need to know sort of a thing. And of
Yeah.
course, you all know that. So yeah, I would say people ask about love the most, but it's also my clients aren't cold to me. Like they're very well aware of the work that I do and the beliefs that I hold. So if I it is more likely to happen if I have like a booth somewhere
Yeah.
where people like strangers are walking up to me, as opposed to someone who listens to my podcast, who is in my social media sphere, and then they decide to book a session. Like then they go, okay, what does Spirit have to say? Then it's more of an open reading. But if I'm at a booth somewhere, if I just did a talk and people want some readings, and they're like, well, is my boyfriend the one? Or like, will my ex want me back? Like I do get those questions. They exist.
Yeah.
And I
think they're okay. They're okay. But
I get why they get asked.
Yeah, me too. But it's always like, it's nice if people like use their intuition first.
Yes.
And to push them. And it's like, I think if somebody comes and they're like, is breaking up with my boyfriend the right thing, is more of a question than like, is my boyfriend the one? Because that can change.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny that you say it that way, because I often will, as I'm shuffling and they're asking questions like along those lines, that's when coaching happens. Like I haven't even pulled a card yet. And I go, well, why do you ask that? Why do you think that? Like I try to like coax them out of their own opinion so we can actually get down to what the question it actually is, rather than just like their superficial question. Because they often think like, I want this out of the reading, but then they come in and they end up leaving with what they actually need. So I do try to like create that sort of bubble, I guess. Once they come down, they sit down, they go, I want to know about my love life. And I'm like, okay, as I'm shuffling, I'm like, tell me more. And they go, well, is it time to break up with my boyfriend? Okay, why do you think that? I'm like, oh, well, this is happening. I'm like, okay, well, what about that don't you like? And so I try to get them to talk about it a little bit more before I even pull cards. Because it's not that I want them to or would ever think that sitting down with somebody is a waste of time, but I want them to feel like they are leaving with something profound and not just a simple like, should I dump my boyfriend? Because if you're asking that question,
You know the
9 times
answer.
out, you know the answer. Absolutely. For sure. Or is what I'm doing the right thing?
Yeah.
He probably knows.
I love that you're doing the coaching though that goes along with it, and not just doing like the straight readings, because I feel the same way. Like I always kind of turn it into some kind of like healing learning,
because otherwise what's
something
the point?
that they need to take away from it, like
For
instead
sure.
of just like questions and the information. Like I feel like Spirit always loves to dive into healing, maybe because that's like what I started with in teaching people. But it's true. I think that's really admirable to not just be like answering the questions and stuff and giving them this like thought process that goes along with it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I tend to ask people the tough questions. I like when I get to a point where I ask them a question, they go, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to pull a card. That's what I try to get to. Like I keep trying to ask why until I get an I don't know. And then that's when we pull the card.
I've never had anybody ever do that when well, you know what? To be fair, I don't ask questions. I don't. I'm just like, tell me what Spirit wants to say.
And people do that too. And that is, I think, easier because they're usually already open. And they sometimes people will ask a question or not ask, people will come in saying, just tell me what Spirit wants to know, but they still have it like a question in their heart, or they still have a situation that they hope gets brought up. I'm sure you can feel very similarly. Like the last time I spoke to a psychic medium, I was like, I would like to speak to my dad, please.
Yes.
Well, instead of Grandpa came through. And I mean, you can't control what Spirit does, just like they can't control what you do. So I think people always have hope and expectations. But your job as the sitter or your job as the reader or the intuitive is to get them what they need, not necessarily what they want.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, exactly. So one card that I know in the deck that's always like, holy crap, when it comes up, is like the Tower card.
Ooh, yes.
So how do you feel? Does it depend on like, I'm assuming that it depends on what the theme of the rest of the reading was around what the Tower card, but is it ever like good things are coming? Here's the Tower card.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't ever do doom and gloom. I don't do doom and gloom with tarot, with Reiki, with coaching, with astrology. Like none of that is ever doom and gloom. It's always meant to be optimistic. So
Yeah.
I do get excited when I see the tower card in any reading setting because it means you have a chance to rebuild. And there
Mm.
often is sorrow that does come with the tower. Because if you're unfamiliar, the tower is when everything comes crashing down and the tower is collapsed. Or it's like about to be collapsed, like, or things are like shifting and changing. The foundation is being shaken up and things are coming crashing down. And your job is to kind of sift through the rubble and rebuild stronger, bigger, better, right? So I get really excited when that happens because it's the person's opportunity to do something different, to apply the lessons they've learned, to maybe do that thing they've always wanted to do, or prove to themselves that they can, in regard, depending on the situation of the reading. But some people do get scared when they see things like the tower. People hate the death card. It's like genuinely one of my favorite cards.
It's such a good card.
It's so good.
That's the one thing that I know is that the death card is good.
I do. Especially in the Everyday Witch Tarot, the death card is beautiful. It's the Grim Reaper in like a white mask, and he's got, or they've got, I just hit my mic. They got like this rope right in front of them, and they're like holding the scissors, and the rope is like, they're only connected with like one little fray strand. There's like smoke everywhere.
Love
and like
it.
in the background, one door is closed, the other door is open. Like it literally couldn't be more interpretive. It's beautiful. But people tend to take the tarot very literally. So they hear death and they go, who's dying? And I'm like, probably no one. Well, I mean, someone somewhere, but no one you know.
That's like, I love, and this probably happens to you too, like people will sit down and they'll be like, don't tell me if I'm going to die. And I say to them, I go, well, newsflash, you are going to die. Like, it's inevitable, but no, I'm not going to tell you if you're going to die. Like, tomorrow, I probably will not know that information. So, people probably do that to you too. They're like, don't tell me. Don't tell me this. Or they get scared.
Or they don't want certain topics to be discussed.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, this is the most loving way. Spirit does not give a shit.
No.
If you need to know something, they're going to tell you. And I know I just asked you this question on my own podcast, but learning that discernment between what message to deliver, how to deliver it, if you should say anything at all, is really important, because you have to meet that person where they're at. You know, if they're not ready to hear like maybe divorce is in your future, then they're just simply not ready to hear it. But also at the same time, I believe you're getting that message for a reason. So it's very diplomatic. It's very gentle and skilled. I think that's where like a lot of the coaching comes into.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting thing when you're dealing with, because I feel like it's almost like when readings happen that people are a little bit like emotionally heightened anyway.
Yeah.
Because they want the answers and they just can't make up their minds themselves.
Especially if it's their first reading.
Yeah, I love when it's someone's first reading.
Yeah. Popping their reading cherry.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Because then they don't know what to expect. And it's almost like, not that you set the precedent for it, but like you have like a pretty decent amount of influence to what they think readings are for, and if they'll go for another one soon or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of in a position where you can really help them decide if this is a good thing or an evil thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with, I know with myself, I don't suggest people get readings more than every 3 months, because then I feel like they kind of feel like it's a crutch and try to get the answers and the decisions from that and not on their own. So it seems like you're on the same page with that.
I am, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage people to even just get an oracle deck that resonates with you, because if you really feel like you want that guidance or you need a little bit of something, a tool of some kind, just learning how to intuitively read for yourself is empowering. But getting a reading from someone else is validating. But it does become a crutch really quickly, like you said. Same with mediumship readings. Like, especially if you're newly bereaved, that's like the worst thing you can do, in my opinion. I guess I've never been in that particular situation, but if you just lost your beloved a week ago, is it really smart to go see a medium immediately? Like, no.
Well,
So
not even that. Spirit doesn't even have like the thing with mediumship is that just like we have to learn to communicate with spirit, spirit has to learn to communicate with us.
yeah,
And if someone has just passed, like there's a very high chance they're still in transition and they're not going to be communicating with us anyway.
mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
so absolutely. I think if somebody ever booked that with me and it was like my husband or wife or whatever died like a week ago, I'd be like, we're going to put a pin in that
Mm-hmm.
for at least 6 months.
That's very ethical of you.
Yeah, I will tell people if I am not their reader, I am. Oh, that's the question. Love my brain. See, I told you that's what I do. Do you ever find it hard to read certain people? Are there ever people? I mean, I guess with the tarot, it's a little different because you have those tools that can kind of like help you through it if you're not getting messages. But like, have you ever been like, I can't read you, I'm not going to charge you, like anything like that?
No. No, I mean, I don't mean to sound like ridiculous, but if someone books with me,
Yeah.
I do believe I am their reader.
Mm-hmm.
However, there have been plenty of times where they're not necessarily an open book, or they're not super expressive, and that's totally fine. It's like their personality. I will say, like, sometimes I start questioning myself within the reading because I'm not getting any feedback. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Or I always tell people that you don't have to share with me. You don't have to tell me what your question is.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me if it resonates, because you really don't. Some people are private, and it's totally fine. And I believe if I can see your face, hear your voice, if I know your name, that's really all I need to tap into that spirit connection to get messages for you through the tarot. So if they don't want to tell me, they don't have to. But I will say that if they choose not to, it makes it hard. And it's mostly because of my own ego. Because I get, well, you're not even like making a facial expression, so how do I know this even makes sense to you?
Yeah.
But I've only ever had one person like get really mad at me for their reading, and that was a long time ago. But usually, almost always, I either don't hear anything from them, so it's just kind of, left to mystery, or they'll come back eventually and they'll be like, you know what, that really resonated, or that really made sense, or like, that reading was so amazing. And I'm like, really? Because you didn't say a damn word, or you didn't react in any way.
Yeah.
Like, but that's just, people just are their own way,
They really are. Like years ago, I'll never forget, I had a Reiki session with someone, and it went really deep. Like I felt very deep. And I guess I was saying stuff to her and she was like, did I do anything right? Like she was like really upset with me.
Oh.
And she got her coat on and she like left like immediately. But then a few weeks later, she was like, that was great. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Because she couldn't wait to get out of there. But I guess it was just really intense.
For sure. And you do catch people in vulnerable moments. Like they might not come to you feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
But then you're inevitably going to hit on vulnerable things.
Yeah. I always ask though through a reading if stuff resonates. Do you ever do that?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
does this make sense? Does this resonate?
Yeah. I'm like, am I in the right, especially when I'm not getting any feedback, I'm like, am I in the right direction? Like, does this resonate? Does this make sense? Can you take this?
Yeah. And there've been plenty of times where I like get to like the fifth card and then it hits on something and then they go, oh, and then they give me like all this exposition and then all of a sudden everything else makes sense.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And it doesn't necessarily need to make sense for me.
No.
As long as it makes sense for them.
Yeah.
But I will say it selfishly is very validating when they give me a little bit more details of their life. I don't need to know their whole life story necessarily. But if I do have a little bit more context, it makes it much better for sure.
Yeah, it feels very good when you hit the nail on the head with stuff and people are like, how did you know that? I'm like, because I'm wonderful.
How did I know that?
Because I'm wonderful. What do you mean? How did I know that?
Because I am one with spirit. That's why.
Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and they were like, tell this person this. Yeah, right. So anyway, So how can the listeners find you if they're interested in a reading?
Yeah. Well, the Spiritually Inspired podcast is wherever you get your pods. And if you are interested in a private session, you can go to spirituallyinspired.co/sessions. And I have options on there for you. We can do tarot, we can do Reiki, we can do tarot, Reiki, and coaching all together in one, which is the ones that people love the most, of course, because you kind of get it all.
You get
'Cause then
everything.
you're right. And then the Reiki at the end of it is kind of inspired by the reading that we just did. So it tends to be very clearing and healing, and it feels really good. And there's so much we can do in, 60 minutes. So
Yeah.
much that can happen. But yeah, if you are interested in a reading, you can go to my website. If you are interested in podcasting or listening to podcasts, you can find the Spiritually Inspired podcast. And I also do monthly readings on my podcast as well for the month ahead. So be sure to tune into that.
Oh, fun. I'm going to have to.
Yeah. Well, I'm just starting that in January. I used to do that on Facebook, but I'm switching over to the podcast to do that. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Facebook
Yeah.
sometimes can be a scary place with stuff like that.
yeah.
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 And I don't want to gatekeep any information, so I want it more available for more people. So
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much
thank
for
you.
taking the time.
Absolutely.
And thank you, listeners, for listening. And I'll see you soon.